Hey everybody, I am Clint, she is Christina. We got to go see a sneak preview of The Maze Runner last night. Christina, what'd you think?
I liked it.
She liked it.
About as much as I liked the book.
Okay, which is to say what?
Which is to say, it was very exciting, but not quite good enough to justify its crazy-ass premise.
So just a little backstory on us. I never even heard of the book before I heard about the movie being made. You have read the books.
There's 4 books, but one's a prequel to the other 3, so...
That's dumb.
I don't even know what percentage that works out to in terms of what I've read. But I've read the first 2 books.
So literally the only thing I knew about this going in is that it was based on yet another young adult novel that I haven't read, which is a fairly common thing for me these days. That being said, like, I think it kind of got me. Like, I didn't know anything about it going into it, but the premise and the way it was executed, it kind of got me.
My theory on it is that this premise is written for people who have read a good number of dystopian YA novels already and are ready for just a world where we lock children in a maze and let them slog
So they can
it out.
take a few things like on faith at this point.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, we're completely comfortable with having like 16-year-olds kill each other for the greater good.
So the premise of this story is that a kid wakes up literally on an elevator as he's coming up, and he comes up into the light, and he's in the middle of this field in the dead center of this maze. Doesn't remember anything. Pretty quickly remembers what his name is, but that's it. Doesn't know who he is, how he got there, what's going on. All he knows is that he's in the middle of this gigantic maze full of scary things. The movie literally starts with just like coming up on black and you're waking up with the kid. Wes Ball, the director, did a really good job of sort of keeping us kind of in his perspective, and you only know what he knows going into it too, which and that's the way that it sort of keeps up with the narrative, you know, throughout the movies. You're really in his perspective, which is an interesting bit of filmmaking. I thought that was really well done.
The movie is very much like a very faithful adaptation of the book. There are changes, there's a number of them, but they all feel a little superficial. Like in the book, they all remember their names immediately. There's no 36-hour grace period before you remember your name. Right. And there's some things that they had to gloss over because there's no longer an internal monologue available to explain things or drive things forward. Which
I think was actually one of the shortcomings of the movie, because I feel like as a young adult film, they really didn't give you any young adult issues to latch onto. That's the thing that it was missing. And here's this perfect setup of these kids who are alone. Is kind of a Lord of the Flies thing going on, alone in the middle of this maze. Literally have no idea who they are, literally have to find themselves, figure out who they are and what they're doing here and why they're here, and figure out all of these great things that young adult, that you know, tween pluses have to deal with, and they just didn't do anything with it, which made the whole thing feel less like a young adult movie and more like just some sort of fantasy sci-fi.
It felt very much like a sci-fi action movie that happened to be starring teenagers.
Right. Which ultimately is why I kind of feel like it might not do too well this weekend, because there's not a lot to grab onto. It's not quite dark enough to really be a grown-up, to really be for a grown-up audience, and it's not quite young adult enough. There's not quite enough, I think, for teens to kind of grab onto.
To really, in droves.
Yeah, exactly. To go see it twice or 3 times or whatever.
That's it. If you like the book, you will like the movie, because it really does bring the book to life. Like, there is nothing. I've never seen a book brought to life more perfectly than this.
Well, there you go. It was fine. Like, some of the sci-fi stuff was good. The action, I thought, was really well staged and really well executed. Like, I bought the physics of the world and the giant maze, and how all the walls moved, and how the Grievers, which are the big scary monsters that live in the maze, how they, you know, looked and moved and felt. Like, I bought all of that. So I mean, it wasn't bad.
I do feel like this movie is very obviously trying to draft off of the Hunger Games and the Twilight success, and that's been a obvious play by the studios over the past couple of years. We've gotten everything from the Mortal Instruments, which never came to be a thing.
Right, City of Bones.
City of Bones.
Right? Yeah. Golden Compass is 5-6 years back. That just went away.
And Aragon, for that matter.
Yeah.
I do feel like this movie was better executed than the majority of the ones that came out, didn't, you know, flared and died. Right. But at the same time, I do feel like there are at least a half dozen YA novels that I have read that I think would make better franchise potential than this one, so I do think it's interesting that they picked this one.
Starting to get into the plot, let's take a quick little spoiler break, just so we don't spoil anything. So really, you've only seen 3 James Bond movies?
Probably more like 5, I guess. But
5-ish?
5-ish. And a couple of them I was like 11, so I don't think that counts.
That barely counts. You need to see at least one from each of the Bonds.
I feel like that's fair.
That's why I think it's totally fair.
Yeah. I fully intend to do that.
I'll get you a list.
Okay, good.
List.
I like homework from my coworkers.
And we're back. Okay, so into the spoiler-heavy section of the review. My biggest thing about the movie is I could have used, again, more of the young adult kind of issues, like deal with them discovering who they are and like the pressures that come with that. Deal with more of that in a sort of a more obvious way.
Yeah.
The action I thought was proportioned correctly. I thought it was a good amount of action.
The right number of minutes of action to.
I wanted less of the story. Like, it was such a weird movie because all the exposition came at the end. And obviously, the nature of the story, the exposition would need to come. The explanation needs to come at the end. That's just how it makes sense. But it was just so big and heavy of a section and so on the nose with, like, you know, the world has been scorched and we live in a wasteland now, and there was a disease that happened, and then we're studying the way that your brains deal with this maze so that we can cure the disease. Then these other people show up and they take the kids somewhere else, into the sequel, I'm sure. Which, is that where the first book ended?
That is where the first book ended. Okay. And I feel like as a movie it could have, you agreed that this could have ended at a slightly earlier point where they just emerge into what appears to be nothing.
If it was the exact same movie, you get to the end, they get a little bit of the explanation when they get to like this weird control room kind of area, but then they just like, F this place, it's crazy, we just watched all of our buddies die, let's get out of here. They kick open a door and it's just wasteland. It's just barren wasteland, and they're like, what, no, and then roll credits. The movie would have hooked me. I would have gone to bought the book last night if they'd have done that, because that would have been really ballsy and really cool. I was into the movie and I was on board for it, and then there was just too much of like explanation at the end.
Yeah.
And I think it would have been much better off without all of that explanation. I would have been like totally gung-ho for the sequel.
The more explanation you put into a lot of these crazy ass worlds, the more you sort of undermine it, because it's almost better to leave it to the viewers or the reader's imagination. Like, oh my gosh, the world is so screwed up, we got to this point.
Right.
Whereas adding the explanation, and it's like, I can't think of any diseases that work like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they give us enough to like start to question more. Yeah. You know, and I have this problem with a lot of, and I've talked a lot about this, I think, is that like when something really works and you kind of catch lightning in a bottle in it, and then you start having to explain yourself, like I feel like you ruin everything when you do that. When sequels start to get sort of in love with their own mythology and like, you know, let's really talk about where the Matrix came from and how this dynamic between us and the machines is going to work.
What's really going on that island?
No. That's not what we liked about the first one. If you sell the conceit, great. You sold it. You did your job. Get out of your own way and just tell the story. Tell the story about what it's really about, which in this case is kids sort of discovering who they are and what their place is in the world. So, all that to say, the movie was good. Yeah. Not great.
Yeah, but if you read the books, you should totally go see the movie, because you'll probably like the movie too. Go
check out the Maze Runner this weekend. Come back, let us know what you thought of it in the comments down below. Click like and subscribe. Come back next time for more movie news on CineFix Now.
Oh, I did want to mention that I'm probably going to go read the third book, so the movie did at least.
Oh, well, that's good.